Maya Rodriguez stepped off the transport shuttle and into what could only be described as organized chaos with a side of existential dread. The Galactic Military Academy sprawled before her like someone had taken every military base in human history, thrown them into a blender with alien architecture, and hit the nightmare fuel setting. "Well," she muttered, adjusting her regulation pack, "this should be fun." Around her, beings from across the galaxy shuffled toward the main complex. There were the Zephyrians with their crystalline skin that probably cost more than her college tuition, but the Garathi who looked like someone had crossed a bear with a tank and given it anger management issues, and the Veltar whose tentacles moved in ways that violated at least 3 laws of physics Maya remembered from high school. Maya, all 5 feet 4 inches of pure human stubbornness, grinned. She'd always been told she was too small, too weak, too human for the big leagues. Today she planned to prove everyone spectacularly wrong. The main courtyard erupted in what could generously be called formation. Maya found herself sandwiched between a Garathi who smelled like sulfur and bad decisions and a Veltar whose tentacles kept accidentally slapping her in the face. "Attention, maggots." The voice belonged to something that had clearly crawled out of humanity's worst nightmares and decided to become a drill sergeant. Krex'ton stood 8 feet tall, covered in scales that could deflect plasma rounds with arms thick enough to bench press a small moon. His yellow eyes swept the crowd like searchlights looking for trouble. "I am Drill Sergeant Krex'ton, and for the next 6 months, I own your pathetic excuse for souls," he bellowed. "Some of you are warriors born from proud civilizations that have conquered star systems." His gaze fell on the humans clustered together like lost sheep. "And some of you are from Earth." The way he said Earth made it sound like a disease. Several alien cadets snickered. Maya felt her jaw clench. "Humans," Krex'ton continued, circling the group like a predator. "The galaxy's newest addition to civilized space. Soft. Weak. No natural armor, no claws, no telepathic abilities. You people use tools because nature forgot to give you anything useful." More laughter from the alien cadets. Maya noticed a few humans looking down at their feet, shoulders slumping. Not her. Krex'ton stopped directly in front of Maya, his massive frame casting her in shadow. "What's your name, meat sack?" "Cadet Maya Rodriguez, Sergeant," she replied, meeting his reptilian gaze without flinching. "Rodriguez," he repeated, making it sound like profanity. "Let me guess, Earth. Probably from one of those overcrowded cities where humans stack themselves like storage units." "Actually, I'm from Texas, Sergeant. We prefer our space and our attitudes big." A few aliens made what might have been gasps. Apparently, smart-mouthing the drill sergeant on day 1 wasn't standard procedure. Krex'ton's lip curled, revealing teeth that belonged in a horror movie. "Attitude won't save you when the plasma starts flying, little human. This academy breaks the weak and forges the strong. Most of your kind wash out in the first week." "Good thing I'm not most of my kind, Sergeant." The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Then Krex'ton laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "We'll see about that, Rodriguez. We'll see about that." 3 weeks into training, Maya had learned several important facts about galactic military doctrine. First, everything was designed by and for beings who could bench press small vehicles. Second, human-sized equipment was considered adorable by most species. Third, Drill Sergeant Krex'ton had apparently made it his personal mission to prove that humans were the galaxy's biggest mistake. Combat training. Krex'ton announced during what humans would call an ungodly hour but aliens seemed to consider sleeping in. "Today we learn hand-to-hand combat. Real combat. Not whatever pathetic flailing your species calls fighting." The training yard was packed with cadets forming a circle around combat mats that had seen better centuries. Maya found herself paired with various aliens over the past weeks, usually ending up on her back wondering if her health insurance covered alien-induced concussions. But she'd been watching. Learning. Taking notes in that methodical way that had gotten her through engineering school and into this mess in the first place. "Rodriguez." Krex'ton's voice cut through the morning air like a plasma blade. "You're up. With me." The crowd of cadets suddenly got very interested in the proceedings. A few even started taking bets, though Maya noted with some satisfaction that the odds weren't as terrible as they'd been 3 weeks ago. Maya stepped onto the mat, rolling her shoulders and cracking her neck. Krex'ton towered over her, all 8 feet of reptilian muscle, and barely contained violence. The thing about humans, Krex'ton announced to the gathered cadets, is that they think technique can overcome natural superiority. Watch and learn why the strong rule the galaxy. He came at her fast, faster than something that size had any right to move. Maya dodged, rolled, and actually managed to stay on her feet for almost 30 seconds before Krex'ton's massive hand caught her shoulder. What happened next was less combat and more physics demonstration. Krex'ton lifted Maya like she weighed nothing, spun her around, and slammed her into the mat with enough force to leave a human-shaped impression in the supposedly indestructible surface. The impact drove every molecule of air from her lungs and turned her vision into a kaleidoscope of pain and embarrassment. The alien cadets erupted in laughter, and what might have been applause in several different languages. And that, Krex'ton announced, standing over her crumpled form, is why humans will always be prey animals in a predator's galaxy. Maya lay there for a moment, tasting blood and seriously reconsidering her life choices. Every bone in her body felt like it had been rearranged by a particularly vindictive chiropractor. The laughter continued, echoing off the training facility walls. Then she smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that had made her engineering professors nervous and her ex-boyfriends sleep with one eye open. Maya pushed herself to her feet, swayed for exactly 1 second, then looked up at Krex'ton with that terrifying grin still plastered across her face. "That's a pretty neat trick, Sergeant," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mind if I try it sometime?" The laughter died. After training, Maya limped to the mess hall where she found an empty table in a corner. Her entire body felt like one giant bruise, and she was pretty sure she'd discovered muscles she didn't know she had purely through their new and exciting pain signals. A shadow fell across her table. Maya looked up to see Pip, one of the few aliens smaller than she was. Pip belonged to a species called the Chitauri, insectoid beings who looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a nervous breakdown. "That was either very brave or very stupid," Pip said in their clicking, nervous voice. "Why not both?" Maya replied, attempting to eat soup without moving her shoulders. Pip's compound eyes fixed on her with something that might have been concern. "Krex'ton has never been challenged by a human before. This will not end well for you." "Oh, it'll end," Maya said, her grin returning. "Just not the way anyone expects." Maya spent the next 2 weeks studying Krex'ton like he was a final exam worth 60% of her grade. She observed his training routines, his fighting patterns, his habits, and most importantly, his weaknesses. Turned out, being 8 feet of reptilian death machine came with some disadvantages. "Higher center of gravity," she muttered, scribbling notes in her personal data pad while watching Krex'ton demonstrate proper grappling technique on an unfortunate Garathi cadet. "Relies on strength over technique. Expects opponents to fight his kind of fight." Pip had become her unofficial study partner, mainly because they were both social outcasts who ate lunch alone. The Chitauri had been assigned to the Academy's engineering track, which apparently made them about as popular as humans in combat training. "I have been analyzing the combat recordings," Pip said, mandibles clicking nervously. "Your species has an unusual approach to problem solving." "Unusual how?" "You do not accept that problems cannot be solved. Most species would acknowledge superior physical capabilities and adapt accordingly. Humans seem to take it personally." Maya looked up from her datapad. "Pip, has anyone ever told you that you're accidentally wise?" "Accidentally? Never mind. What else did you notice?" Pip's antennae twitched in what Maya had learned was excitement. Krex'ton's species evolved on a high-gravity world. They are immensely strong but not particularly agile. They also have a cultural emphasis on direct confrontation. Deception in combat is considered dishonorable. And humans? Humans, according to galactic databases, are persistence hunters who survive by being clever, adaptable, and utterly without combat honor. Maya's grin could have powered a small starship. "Pip, I think we're going to be great friends." Her training regimen became the stuff of legend, mainly because it looked like someone had developed a workout routine while suffering from severe head trauma. While other cadets practiced conventional combat techniques, Maya could be found in the engineering labs, the physics simulators, and the Academy's historical archives. She studied human military history, from Sun Tzu to modern special forces tactics. She researched Krex'tonian physiology until she could diagram their skeletal structure from memory. She practiced moves that had never been seen in galactic combat sports because they'd been developed by a species that specialized in being sneaky, vindictive, and absolutely refusing to admit when they were outmatched. "This is insane," muttered Jake Morrison, another human cadet, as Maya demonstrated her latest technique on a practice dummy. "You're planning to fight a drill sergeant who could bench press a shuttle." "Not fight," Maya corrected, adjusting her stance. "Outsmart." The betting pools had grown exponentially. Word of the inevitable rematch had spread throughout the Academy like gossip in a small town. Aliens were placing wagers not just on whether Maya would survive, but on how long it would take Krex'ton to knock her unconscious. The smart money was on immediately. Maya preferred being underestimated. It was like being given a tactical advantage with a bow on top. During evening study sessions, she and Pip worked on what they'd started calling Project Humility. It involved physics calculations, psychological profiles, and what Pip generously termed creative interpretation of Academy regulations. "The rematch will happen during final combat evaluations," Maya mused, reviewing her notes. "Public setting, formal rules, and Krex'ton's reputation on the line." "You realize this could end your military career before it begins," Pip pointed out. "Pip, my friend," Maya said, her eyes gleaming with the kind of determined madness that had gotten humans to the stars in the first place, "I didn't come here to have a career. I came here to prove a point, which is that humans are the universe's biggest mistake only if you're standing in the wrong place when we decide to correct it." Final combat evaluations arrived with all the pomp and ceremony of a galactic execution. The main training arena was packed with cadets, instructors, and what looked like half the Academy's administrative staff. Maya suspected word had traveled beyond the cadet population. This wasn't just a combat evaluation anymore. It was entertainment. She entered the arena to a mixture of cheers and what sounded like several different species versions of funeral dirges. The odds board showed her chances of victory at roughly the same level as spontaneous galactic peace. Krex'ton stood in the center of the arena, looking like a monument to violence. His scales gleamed under the arena lights, and his yellow eyes tracked Maya's movement with predatory focus. "Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted sentient beings," announced Commander Velthak, the Academy's head of combat training. "Today's final evaluation features Cadet Maya Rodriguez of Earth against Drill Sergeant Krex'ton of Drakmor Prime." The crowd erupted. Maya noticed several beings holding what appeared to be recording devices. Great. Her humiliation would be preserved for posterity. Maya stepped onto the combat mat, feeling surprisingly calm. She'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, and now that it was here, all the nervousness had been replaced by cold, calculating focus. "Any last words, meat sack?" Krex'ton asked, flexing his claws. "Just one," Maya replied, settling into a deceptively casual stance. "Pimber." Krex'ton's confusion lasted exactly long enough for the match to begin. He came at her with the same overwhelming force that had pancaked her weeks ago, expecting the same result. Maya wasn't there. She'd studied his attack patterns until she could predict them in her sleep. As Krex'ton lunged forward, Maya dropped low, spun to his left and struck. Not at his torso, which was armored in scales and muscle. Not at his head, which was too well protected. Instead, she hit the back of his right knee with a precisely calculated strike designed to disrupt his balance. Krex'ton stumbled. For just a moment, the 8-foot tower of reptilian death became off balance. Maya was already moving. She'd borrowed a page from human martial arts, specifically the kind developed by people who regularly faced opponents twice their size. As Krex'ton tried to recover his footing, Maya grabbed his extended arm, planted her foot against his hip, and used his own momentum against him. The throw was textbook physics lever fulcrum, and the kind of rotational force that made engineering professors weep with joy. Krex'ton went down hard. The arena went dead silent. But Maya wasn't done. As Krex'ton tried to push himself up, clearly stunned by this turn of events, Maya moved in for the psychological kill. "You know what your problem is, Sergeant?" she said, loud enough for the entire arena to hear. "You fight like you're still on your homeworld, where everyone follows the same rules and bigger always wins." She helped him to his feet with exaggerated courtesy. "But I'm from Earth. We don't have rules. We have suggestions, and we ignore most of those too." Krex'ton shook his massive head, yellow eyes focusing on her with something that might have been respect. That was unexpected. "Sir, with all due respect," Maya grinned, "you ain't seen nothing yet." The second takedown was pure malice. Krex'ton came at her more cautiously this time. But Maya had spent weeks studying not just his fighting style but his psychology. She knew exactly what buttons to push. "Come on, Sergeant," she taunted, dancing just outside his reach. "Is this how Drakmorian warriors fight? My grandmother hits harder, and she's been dead for 10 years. Anger made him sloppy. Anger made him predictable. When he lunged, Maya was ready. She sidestepped, caught his wrist, and used a combination of leverage and momentum that would have made Newton himself applaud. Krex'ton hit the mat twice as hard as he'd slammed her weeks ago, and the sound echoed through the suddenly silent arena like a judgment from the gods. Maya stood over him, grinning like a maniac. "And that," she announced to the stunned crowd, "is why humans will always be the galaxy's biggest surprise." The aftermath of Maya's victory spread through the academy like a particularly virulent strain of gossip. Within hours, the combat footage had been uploaded to every corner of the Galactic Network, complete with commentary in 17 languages and at least 3 different musical remixes. Maya became an overnight celebrity, which was exactly as uncomfortable as it sounded. "Rodriguez," Krex'ton called as she entered the mess hall the next morning. The entire facility went quiet, every conversation stopping mid-sentence as hundreds of alien cadets watched to see what would happen next. Maya approached the drill sergeant's table, where he sat alone with what appeared to be the reptilian equivalent of coffee and regret. "Sergeant," she said carefully. "Sit down," he rumbled. "We need to talk." Maya sat, acutely aware that every being in the mess hall was watching them with the intensity usually reserved for impending natural disasters. "In 30 years of military service," Krex'ton began, his voice carrying across the silent room, "I have never been defeated by a cadet. Not once." Maya waited, unsure whether an apology or a victory dance would be more appropriate. "I have also never learned as much from a single combat encounter," he continued. "Your species fights like nothing else in the galaxy. We're stubborn that way, Sergeant." Krex'ton's laugh rumbled like distant thunder. "Stubborn, yes, but also clever, adaptable, and apparently completely insane." Word of Maya's unconventional victory spread beyond the academy. Within a week, she found herself fielding requests from cadets of other species who wanted to learn human combat techniques. The requests ranged from reasonable to ridiculous to physically impossible given basic anatomy. "I cannot learn to fight like humans," complained Zex Nera, a crystalline Zephyrian whose body structure resembled living artwork. "I do not have joints that bend in those directions." "That's not the point," Maya explained, leading a group of alien cadets through what she'd started calling Applied Human Stubbornness 101. Human fighting techniques aren't about copying the moves. They're about changing how you think about the problem. Pip had become her unofficial assistant, providing technical analysis and moral support. The nervous engineer had discovered they had a talent for explaining human psychology to confused aliens. "Humans do not accept defeat as inevitable," Pip explained to a group of Veltar cadets whose tentacles were tied in knots trying to understand Maya's teaching methods. "When faced with superior opponents, most species adapt their expectations. Humans adapt their tactics." The Academy's training protocols began to evolve as instructors tried to incorporate human elements into traditional curriculum. This led to what historians would later call the Great Tactical Revision of 2387, and what Maya privately referred to as accidentally breaking military doctrine. Combat simulations that had remained unchanged for centuries suddenly included scenarios where the smallest and weakest participant could achieve victory through creative problem-solving. Strategy classes began incorporating case studies from human military history, much to the bewilderment of alien professors who couldn't understand why humans seemed to prefer winning through complexity rather than strength. Your species is giving me headaches, complained Professor Quintal, the Academy's head of tactical studies, during a particularly chaotic strategy session. Human battle plans read like abstract art crossed with engineering manuals. That's the point, Professor Maya replied, grinning as she watched alien cadets struggle with a simulation based on the Battle of Thermopylae. If your enemy can understand your plan, you're not thinking creatively enough. The changes weren't limited to combat training. Maya's influence spread through the Academy like a particularly persistent virus, infecting everything from engineering courses to diplomatic protocols. Human cadets, emboldened by Maya's success, began applying human problem-solving methods to alien challenges with predictably chaotic results. Equipment designed for heavy gravity species was modified with human engineering principles. Communication protocols were revised to account for human cultural quirks. Even the mess hall menu expanded to include Earth-style alternatives, though Maya wasn't entirely sure what alien chefs thought constituted human cuisine. "This is madness," observed Commander Velthak during a staff meeting that Maya definitely wasn't supposed to know about, but heard through ventilation systems that were apparently designed by people who'd never met a curious human. "These humans are turning our entire curriculum upside down." "Sir," came Krex'ton's voice with respect, "perhaps the curriculum needed turning upside down." Graduation day arrived with all the pomp and ceremony befitting the premier military academy in the galaxy. Dignitaries from dozens of worlds attended. Representatives from major military commands filled the viewing stands, and the media presence was so overwhelming that Maya briefly considered hiding in a supply closet until the whole thing blew over. She didn't on it, mainly because Pip had stationed themselves by every potential hiding spot with a look of determined disappointment that was surprisingly effective for an insectoid engineer. The graduation ceremony followed protocols established over centuries of tradition, with one notable exception. For the first time in Academy history, a human cadet was called forward to receive the Tactical Innovation Award, an honor typically reserved for species with naturally superior strategic capabilities. Maya walked across the stage to polite applause that gradually built into something approaching enthusiasm. She received her award from Admiral Krex'ton, a being who looked like someone had crossed an octopus with a battleship and given it a military commission. "Cadet Rodriguez," the Admiral announced, their voice carrying across the ceremony grounds through advanced amplification technology. "Your unconventional approach to military challenges has forced this academy to reconsider fundamental assumptions about combat effectiveness and tactical innovation." Maya accepted the award, a crystalline structure that probably cost more than most planets' annual military budgets, and resisted the urge to make a smart remark about alien assumptions. Then came the surprise. However, Admiral Krex'ton continued, "We have decided that one award is insufficient recognition for the educational chaos you have introduced to our institution." The Admiral gestured and Krex'ton stepped forward carrying what appeared to be instructor's insignia. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Rodriguez. You are hereby assigned as the Academy's first Director of Unconventional Tactical Studies." The crowd erupted. Maya stared at the insignia, then at Krex'ton, then back at the Admiral. "Sir," she managed, "I just graduated 5 minutes ago. And in those 5 minutes you have already revolutionized our understanding of military effectiveness," the Admiral replied with what might have been amusement. "We have decided to formalize the chaos." Later, during the reception, Maya found herself surrounded by representatives from various galactic military organizations that all apparently interested in hiring humans for positions that seemed to involve professional troublemaking. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," said General Hexnera of the Zephyrian Defense Corps, "we would like to discuss implementing human tactical consultants within our command structure. We are prepared to offer substantial compensation for human strategic advisors," added Admiral Krex'ton of the Drakmorian Fleet. Apparently no relation to her former drill sergeant despite the similar name and identical inability to pronounce human names correctly. Maya nodded politely and made non-committal sounds while mentally calculating how many ways this could go spectacularly wrong. Krex'ton found her later, standing on a balcony, overlooking the academy grounds where new cadets were already beginning their own journey through organized suffering and character development. "Regrets?" he asked, settling beside her with the careful movements of someone whose pride had been thoroughly educational. "About which part?" "Challenging you, accidentally breaking military doctrine. or accepting a job that apparently involves teaching aliens how to think like humans? Any of it? All of it. Maya considered the question while watching a group of new human cadets arguing with their assigned quarters door, which had apparently been designed by and for beings with more tentacles than humans typically possessed. "You know what the real secret is, Sergeant?" she said finally. "Lieutenant," he corrected. "You outrank me now." "And what secret?" "Humans aren't actually stronger, faster, or smarter than most galactic species," Maya replied. "But we're too stupid to realize when we're supposed to give up." Krex'ton's laugh rumbled across the academy grounds like distant thunder. "And that," he said, "is exactly why the galaxy needs more humans in uniform." Maya grinned, watching the chaos unfold below as human cadets applied creative problem-solving to alien architecture. "Just promise me one thing, Krex'ton." "What's that, Lieutenant?" "When the next batch of humans shows up and starts breaking things, remember that you asked for this." The drill sergeant's laughter followed her back into the reception, where she spent the rest of the evening explaining to various alien dignitaries that no, humans could not actually teach their species to be more stubborn, but they could certainly try. And that, Maya reflected, was probably the most human answer possible. The galaxy would never be the same. Maya couldn't decide if that was a promise or a threat, but either way it was going to be entertaining.